Hello everyone, we're back in Gothenburg enjoying this Swedish weather where we're gonna talk to a startup that specializes in helping this car's self-driving system understand the world around it. And this startup is called Kognic. So let's go in and talk to Daniel how this startup does over Fika. Thank you, Daniel, for taking the time and joining us for Startup Fika. I brought some Fika for us to enjoy.
Nice.
And
Appreciate that.
Now it's time to talk about the startup. But before we do that, let's engage with the Fika.
Yes, of course.
The kind of
Excellent choice of Fika.
Yes, of course, only the best for the best.
I have one of these.
Now, let's start talking about your startup, right? So how would you explain Kognic to your plumber, for instance?
So if you want to move around in the world as a human, you have to see things around you, right? Mm-hmm. It's much harder if we are forced to walk around with our eyes closed. Mm-hmm. So right now we're trying to make machines autonomous. So basically more intelligent, able to move around. So Kognic is based on the vision that we think everything that moves will be autonomous. But for that to be possible, we need to help machines see and understand the world. And so far, I think most people can follow. And then the how of that is a bit more involved. So that's basically examples humans create in collaboration with machine learning models. That describe the desired behavior of the system. So Kognic develops software to make that process as efficient, cost-efficient, fast and reliable as possible.
Yeah, if I was a plumber, I'd definitely understand what Kognic does now. And how did this company start? How did this Kognic start?
So I'm a lifelong robotics nerd. And this is quite a long time ago, so maybe 20 years ago. And quite quickly it became clear to me that the main limitation for getting, for creating and training high-performance machine learning models was access to training data. And in my first job at a company called Recorded Future, that was the biggest constraint we had. So the algorithms were fine, the training data was the scarce resource, and Kognic builds on that sort of experiencing that bottleneck motivated me to create Kognic.
Amazing. And now you've taken it to the next step. And has this always been the vision, where you are today?
I mean, I don't think so much about the current or desired state of the company as such, as I think about sort of the inevitable changes I see in technology and society. So in that sense, I feel like we're on the right track. And running a company is a lot about timing to have the right size and revenue and cost sort of time all of that. And that's a constant challenge.
Yeah, and throughout this path that you always have to reassess where you are, where the future is. Has there been a pivotal moment maybe has shaped what Kognic?
I usually say that we're a new company every quarter. And people only believe me after 3 or 4 quarters. So we're in a very fast-moving environment. We compete globally. Every single deal we pursue, we are faced with global competition. So I'd say that there is, from my perspective, there isn't really like a single moment that I think was more defining than any other as such. It's more that it's like a constant sort of flow of new information that shapes us every quarter.
And with all these competitors you have out there, how do you get yourself be different?
So I think about the customer obstacles. I think the best way to run a company successfully is to be obsessed with that and with your internal ability to overcome obstacles for customers. And if you are solving the hardest problems better than anyone else, you will get customers. But I'm also deliberately kind of a deep tech entrepreneur in the sense that I'm not trying to sell a consumer goods into a marketing dominated space, right? We're trying to sell a technical solution to a relatively technical problem, mostly on the merits of objective performance. So in that sense, my strategy is suitable for our business. So we do have competitors, and figuring out how to position against them matters, but more in terms of like, what are the customer problems we prioritize solving, and what do we believe in that is somehow different or unique in the market, and then the differentiation sort of flows from that.
You're doing amazingly with the company. I've been reading about the successes all over, and with such a fast-growing company as yours, is there like there's always a lot of moving parts, and what aspect of your company would you attribute the success that you've been having to?
So in some sort of hierarchy of things, like ultimately you have to make the right analysis of what the market needs first of all. Like there's no team or CEO that can overcome a lack of demand. So the vast majority of companies at a startup stage that fail because there isn't enough demand. And then you can fail for many other reasons too, of course, like bad management or bad hiring or bad whatever. But that's where it all starts. And some of the breakout successes have insight into, I think a lot of the sort of outlier success is pretty random, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to argue that someone is able to like engineer extreme growth. It somehow just happens sometimes. There's tons of brilliant founders who pursue very reasonable ideas that could very well become breakout successes. Most of them don't become that. And even like super experienced venture capitalists know that the vast majority of their investments, despite extremely demanding due diligence, will default. So whenever I get questions about this, and I of course appreciate feedback on our success, I think it's important to be humble before the fact that timing and market demand far exceeds everything else in importance.
What's something you're proud of since that you've aligned yourself with the demand?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of focus and integrity in certain aspects that I think have served us well. So there's a lot of people who've tried to kind of talk us out of the market we're in. You know, don't work with automotive, it's super slow or difficult. Don't like be that close to hardware. I think there are many benefits with those things because I like kind of autonomy and robotics and hardware because I think there are limits to how much we can do in virtual. We do, after all, live in the physical world. So by putting together a very ambitious team that we've been growing incrementally and staying focused on sensor fusion, data annotation, sort of committing to autonomy developers as our customers, we've sort of managed to accumulate an advantage over several years. And we continue working on that without any... we don't intend to change in that sense.
And you shouldn't. You should continue listening to yourself because it's going great so far. Yeah. So what's, now that you're a big AI company, helper of AI in that sense, what's a common misunderstanding in this industry that you'd like to debunk?
Oh, wow. So I mean, in some sense, Kognic has an ironic role in the value chain in that so whenever there is a gap in capabilities in an AI algorithm, you need more or better training data. We help bridge that gap. And what I see is that for every advance we make, we also find many more issues and edge cases. And I think that we're far away from fully automating many of the aspects of what humans can do. But I've really thought about this for a very long time, and there is no evidence to me that transformers in their current form are able to successfully replace humans in many of the things we take for granted. So maybe debunk is a strong word, but like I'm less convinced that we will have AGI in the next couple of years than some in my field.
Is that what you feel when looking at Elon Musk? When he's
I don't
introducing all these
care
AI?
about Elon Musk.
You don't. That's a quote.
Yeah. I do spend a lot of time in both California and China, and there's clearly a large contingent of people who are extremely stressed out about kind of a runaway AGI scenario. I've entertained that idea over and over, and it's hard to entirely dismiss it. Like if you just think about it, from a sort of strictly logical perspective, it's hard to argue against the risk of it. But I think the probability of it in the near future, and by that I mean maybe 5 years, is very, very low.
No.
In my personal.
That's good to know. And great answers. But now I want to introduce a new segment, which is the man behind the startup, where we talk about the man behind the startup.
I hope you find some women at some point too.
Yeah. Then we'll have to change the title. For now, what's a belief or mindset you've held that's shaped how you've led and built?
I share pretty much everything that I know with the entire company at all times. And this is somewhat overwhelming to a lot of people who join. And sometimes it creates a lot of anxiety because the world is complicated. But in general, my view is that if you hire someone, you trust them to know things. And to make good decisions, you need to have as much context as you can. So I practice an extremely sort of verbose leadership style to the point where, I don't dismiss the fact that could be a downside, but it's a price I'm willing to pay for the benefits of transparency.
Yeah, it's like you're creating a community within your company, right?
You can smell it from a mile away. And there's something about people who you don't feel are authentic. And same with, if something bad happens, it just gets worse if you try to hide it. So in general, I just think, share success and failure equally. Be open about the challenges the company has, and make sure people are involved in overcoming those challenges.
Great answer. And through your experiences that you've been talking about being a learning nerd, as you made it phrase it, what's something or a moment in your life that you think has set you in this founder's path?
Good question. So I think there are a few kind of traits that you benefit from when pursuing a venture. One is that I think you have to be pretty independent, so kind of satisfied with being alone in some sense, because it is a pretty lonely pursuit. It helps to have a co-founder like I do and have people that you trust close to you, but ultimately as a CEO, you're the one who is ultimately responsible. So you have to make certain decisions, and at some point there's no one to ask but yourself. So I had a lot of surgery when I was a child, and I think it's a little bit of revenge, a desire to kind of prove that I can do things comes somewhere from that, even if it's not totally clear to me exactly how it works.
Wow. Yeah, did not expect that you've been gone through such an experience as a young.
I had a great childhood in many ways, but that was certainly a bit different.
Yeah.
And those kinds of experiences, it's not, building a business is not reasonable, right?
Yeah.
The quality of life is bad. The probability of success is low. So like, if you think about it too long, it's not something you should do.
Well, here we are.
Yeah, and then you have to kind of be damaged in some way, I think, to kind of feel like you have enough to prove to do it.
Yeah.
The most well-functioning people I know would never dream of building a business.
Very true. So now a more important question, one that I think you'll have to think about for a while here. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I think the smaller ones are maybe more manageable.
What's the technique there? Go-to strategy?
I don't know. Maybe. I think a big duck would be pretty scary. I would prefer a bunch of small horses.
That's a fair point. I think like trying to ride the duck would be fun.
That would be fun though. Yeah. If it wasn't fighting it, but rather riding it.
You can tame it.
Yeah, maybe.
There's no
I guess.
rules here.
I guess.
All right. So now with all the success going on, how do you stay grounded when things are going so quickly and feel chaotic as it does when, just as you described, being a business developer?
So for me, it's hard to relate to the idea that it's like all amazing. I think that's a bigger battle to win as a founder.
And how have you managed to do that?
I mean, in my case, it's because it's pretty simple. Like I remain 100% convinced that the type of work we do inevitably needs to be done. So, you know, we've been growing fast year over year. Far from clear that we will do that this year. We had a great year the year before. We've grown from 70 million to 120 to 200 almost. But every new year is a new battle. And the global economy has changed a lot. So right now, for example, my customers in Europe and the US are having an awful time because of the Orange Man, who's trying to just troll the world for no good reason. This is hard because, on one hand, we have invested a lot in customer relationships and in distribution in Europe and the US. Those markets are declining. And then you have to balance your cash and liquidity to become less dependent while taking upfront cost in a new market. Like, these are not easy things to pull off. So I'm pretty humble before our situation. On the other hand, I think that paranoia has served us well over the years. There is no shortage of challenges. And in some sense, each stage of building a company has its own challenges. So when you're just getting started, you have challenges convincing investors, early employees, kind of going from zero to something. And at that stage, it's kind of a credibility, demand risk that you need to overcome. And then once you do that, it shifts into kind of a scalability problem, right? Which has it's different in many ways. That freedom and sort of chaos and independence that some people love about the first couple of years then turns into something where efficiency, process, and repeatability becomes more important. And as you've proven that, you get into this maturity stage where, after 7, 8, 9 years, even very determined and committed people will maybe want to do something different. So you'll start losing some early employees, you'll get investors who want to invest in the new big shiny thing, At the same time, there's much less risk. So it's easier to convince people that things will work, but it's also kind of in some sense a bit more boring. So, exciting, high risk, good for some people. Scale up, process, good for some people. Mature, de-risked, good for some people. Every stage has its own challenges.
It's all about finding the balance.
Yeah, or just adapting constantly to circumstance. Again, when I look at other founders and companies that I can have visibility into, it is pretty hard to adapt as quickly as you need to adapt to run a company through several stages. Most people are maybe more appropriate for one stage, but not the next one or the next one. There are early stage founders who are amazing at hustling and improvising and so forth, that are absolutely terrible at getting repeatability and process into things, and so forth. And vice versa, for that matter.
Of course. And now, is something that you wish people would ask you?
Good question. I mean, I get a lot of questions, so I'm not short on people being curious, maybe. I think that, we don't talk a lot about sort of the balance between competing and creating good jobs, I think. That's something I think about a lot. So clearly, large companies tend to become too comfortable. On the other hand, I think it's naive to expect everyone to work on the terms that a startup requires. So we're seeing now kind of a big surge in a more energetic, more kind of hustling startup environment in Europe, which I think is very, very inspiring and good. I think a lot of that needs to kind of become a part of the operating model for larger companies, but we also need to figure out where we draw the line. Because I see in China an extreme version where 996 and sort of Neihuan and other cultural themes cause people to work 12, 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, and they're miserable. So
Of course.
that's something I it's not a business problem as such maybe, but it's one I think about as a person, you know.
And what do you think the solution is?
I think fundamentally, like the meaning of life isn't maybe to just work all the time. I think we should strive to create a society of work that also gives room for purpose outside of work, while still being sort of realistic about the importance of efficiency and productivity. But striking that balance is super, super hard. So it's easy to kind of descend into raw startup, everything should just be non-stop work, or to slide too far into, leaving work early and worrying more about, things outside of work. And those big companies that we depend on in Sweden and elsewhere, they need to shape up, but I don't think the solution is to just go full-on startup either.
It's an interesting topic.
As an employer, I think about this a lot.
Which is fair. You should.
Yeah.
And if everything ended tomorrow, the startup, the tech, the AI, everything, what would you do?
I mean, I'd build it back up again.
If that wasn't an option, then I'll make it extra difficult.
I don't know how to do anything but build.
The same company that you have now, or is something else that
Whatever.
Whatever. Just continue building. Amazing.
Always be busy building.
That's good. And what's something that excites you most about the future?
I mean, I take some comfort in the fact that almost nothing is invented yet. I mean, we almost know nothing, which is pretty amazing. Like, considering how little we know about the world and how it works and what's going to happen, the opportunities to invent things is pretty much limitless. Of all the things we could know as a species, we know virtually nothing.
That's fair. I mean, there's just the ocean. There's so much.
Everything. I mean, we don't even know how our head works. Not to mention most things in the universe.
So what's the technology that's looking into extra?
I mean, I'm generally curious, but like I obviously spend a lot of time on robotics and embodied AI and kind of studying how visual language action models are evolving and humanoid robotics. Right now there's a huge mismatch between the amount of PR that the form factor is getting if you compare that to how dumb they are. Like, we don't really have a good way to train and operate generalized dexterous manipulation today. So most of these humanoid robotics companies are pretty much useless because the brain is not good enough in the machine yet. The bet is that we'll figure it out before they run out of money. And I'm sitting here watching them go, and I'm excited to see if they make it.
I mean, it's mostly you see these TikTok reels of robots.
I don't have TikTok, so I don't know.
Or LinkedIn or whatever it could be, just robots.
I don't use any social media except LinkedIn.
Is that more just save your brain power for this?
I genuinely don't care what other people are doing.
It's good. Good mindset to have. All right, with that, I think finished up all my questions, and I want to thank you for taking the time of your day to sit with us, have some fika, and talk a bit about your startup. Coming. Yeah. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
I mean, I encourage everyone to try out building something, even if it's not a business. Just kind of turning ideas into something and putting it out there. Video online, a website, an app in an app store. Humans' creativity and our ability to build things, I think, is a great source of feeling purpose. The happiest people I know are the people who don't just think about things, but actually do things as well.
That's great. And you can follow Daniel here everywhere. You can see it in the description. And thank you again, Daniel, for taking the time. This has been Star Fika, where we have Fika with stars.